I'm Teneale.
And I'm Kelsey, and we're financial advisors from Allman Partners True Wealth, bringing you thought-provoking conversations around you, your money and your life on the Wealth Experience podcast. Welcome listeners, and if you've clicked on the podcast today, then you're probably thinking about starting a family in the future, or perhaps it's about to happen. And like many of us, the financial aspect of choosing to start a family is a huge aspect of making that decision. So I am currently 37 weeks pregnant. So I was quite inspired to talk about this topic from a financial perspective. And Teneale, I've been reading a lot of forums and blogs online about this. So what I've seen is a lot of the commentary in these types of communities effectively sounds like the question that people are asking themselves is, how do we financially make this work when the cost of living is so high right now? And I have no doubt that there's couples out there that are probably either delaying starting a family for that reason, or choosing just not to start a family for financial reasons. So I thought this would be a good topic to just unpack and give people maybe a little bit more information of maybe what they're not aware of how you might be able to still bring that together.
Absolutely. And I think too, there might be a lot of sacrifice that inevitably has to be made too, because sometimes it can't be as planned, you know, and you might have started a family and then the cost of living's risen sharply, or work situation has changed, or you've had to move, or families moved away, or, you know, so many different factors. So I think the financial aspect can become very burdensome.
It's scary.
And scary. You're absolutely right, because it's not all of a sudden when it's not just my mouth that I have to feed and me that I need to look after. I'm in charge of this whole other human or humans. So yeah, I definitely think that it's an important one, and there's so much information, but if we can equip with some resources to help out, that would be ideal.
That's it. So let's talk through some of the key areas around, you know, how you might be able to attain some capital income to assist with funding that period of time when perhaps you're not working and you're having your baby and raising your child, and how to prepare them as a couple. Yeah.
And some of these can be really obvious, and you know, it's certainly not saying that that this is not something that people might have already done, but just some of the obvious ones here in terms of firstly having a look at how you actually afford paternity, maternity leave. Maybe you check firstly the entitlements that you have with your employer. Now that's pretty obvious, right? It's going to be different for everyone, because if you're in a government employed position, you know, healthcare, police, those types of things, then maybe there's a higher chance that you are actually entitled to some form of pay for a period of time rather than being in the private sector. And that might be 6 months at full pay or half pay or something like that.
And that goes a long way, right, Teneale?
Oh,
if you've got
100%.
that benefit from your employer, that's huge. And maybe we're not talking to this group of people as such.
No, yeah. I think, and I guess it might not be the golden bullet though. Like it might not be that it's going to cover me for that whole space of time, but it might go a long ways towards that. And then it's also being logical about how I use that and how that helps me either transition out or transition back into work. Am I better off taking this pay at half pay for a longer period of time? Do I have resources to fill the rest, or do I need it at full pay for a shorter period of time and then going back, or whatever the case may be? But I guess for many people, if your employer doesn't provide payment during this leave, you know, check your partner's entitlements. If you're going into this with a partner, maybe they've got something in their employment contract that might go a long way in your planning as well.
Because I think what we're seeing in the world nowadays is a lot more businesses are coming to the table and offering men better paternity leave and pay, because that never used to be a thing.
Yeah, it's recognised that males have a much larger role in the upbringing of children than what they traditionally were expected to have, I should say, because both men and women are expected to need to work to cover the cost of living these days. It's just different. It's just a different environment.
That's right. And a lot of men may be, you know, accepting contracts and stuff of employment without actually looking at this, because at that point in time it's just not relevant. So really good point. Go back, understand your current contract with your employer as a male, and see what you have, even if that's just 2 weeks of full pay. That could go a long way. If you can work on your budget and bring your costs down, maybe that means you could afford to take a month off. You know?
Absolutely.
Who knows? And that definitely helps. So, but for a lot of people, there is a big cohort of people out there that they don't have anything from their employer.
Yes. Yeah.
Neither does their partner, or or not very much at all. So there's no income. Income stops. Your earned income completely stops at that point. And I think this is where people kind of go,
now what?
What are we going to do? So first thing is, again, this is another obvious one, but check with Centrelink what your entitlements are. So the government will pay paid parental leave, which is currently 22 weeks, at $915.80. So that's at September 2024 if you're listening to this into the future. And that's based on a 5-day week. And this kicks in from the 1st of July. And that's set to increase to 24 weeks and then to 26 weeks over 25 and 26.
So it's becoming aware that the government's becoming more aware of the need to be able to provide some level of support for parenting.
Absolutely. And the figures there are based on minimum wage.
Yes.
So, it's not going to, perhaps it's not going to match your salary, but at least
it's something.
It's, minimum wage for that period of time.
Maybe it'll cover some groceries.
Yeah, just about. And I think it's important to remember as well that figure is the gross figure. So there's still tax that's going to come off that as well. Yeah. So
don't get into that trap for sure.
Yeah. So, there might be 15% tax that gets taken off that. But they're going to look at your income. So when you go and do your tax returns, they'll look at your income for the full financial year. So if you only take 6 months off, you go back to work for 6 months, but your actual tax rate is higher than 15%.
Yeah, so this is where your planning becomes critically important about how do I leverage that? Am I better off having a higher rate of tax taken out on each pay cycle, or do I need that as much as possible, keep it at the 15% and then
deal with
take
the
a
bill
larger
later.
tax bill later?
Yeah. So something to be mindful of. There's still tax that applies. It's essentially free money, but you've still got to manage that well because it's still income to you.
Yeah.
And paid through your employment.
Yeah,
as well.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's going to be conditions, though, that needed to be met so that you're eligible for such payment.
Yeah, because not everybody is.
Yeah, no,
not
definitely.
everybody is.
And there's going to be, for these kinds of ones, they're typically income tested. So, again, we're talking about what it's like at the moment. This will definitely change over time. But right now, the income from your previous financial year, so we're in the 25 financial year now, if in the 24 financial year, the income was under the threshold, so it had to be under $175,788. And so
as an individual, not as a couple.
Yeah.
As an individual. So if you're looking at yourself.
Perfect. Yeah. But I guess what's interesting as well is not only is that just the income for yourself, but it's based on your adjusted taxable income. So in addition to employed income or self-employed income, you would have to add back any other income like rental income from properties, net investment losses on investments or properties.
That's a tricky one that could catch people.
Yeah, definitely. Because you might find that you're not getting any cash flow from an investment or from a property because you've got gearing on it and you're therefore not paying taxes and whatnot. You're actually getting tax back, but it adds back as an assessable item for the income purposes of this income test. It's very important to really have a look at it, understand from the Centrelink website. If you're not sure about it, go and actually speak to an officer there, financial information officer, and understand what you will be or not be entitled to beforehand, because it's a bit too late afterwards to go, oh no, that's not going to come through the way I thought it was.
And this one is actually a little bit more complex. Again, there's another layer to this, and this is just looking at it as a individual. So if you was looking at, or my income, for instance, I was just looking at it for me. If you, let's just say you failed that for whatever reason, you don't have to just look at it as an individual. You can look at it again as a couple. So there's also another threshold that if you fail this one, so even for good income earners, if you're earning over $175,000, it doesn't mean that you're not entitled to the payment. You just have to go, well, as a family, what's the income?
Yeah.
So all of that is available.
So you get choice, do you?
Yes.
Didn't realise that.
So you have to actually go on the Centrelink website and have a look at those numbers. Again, they change.
Yeah.
And it will be based on your partner's adjusted taxable income too. This can get quite hairy. I think probably the more that you earn as a family and the more complexity you've got in the situation, this is where you need to look at this a bit closer. But it's not to say that you're not entitled. But for a lot of people, earning under the $175,000 is gonna catch you in this bracket where you do have a claim.
Yeah.
But there's another part to that.
Yeah, there always is.
You've got to make the work test.
Work test.
Yeah.
So been working. Yeah.
Well, you've got to have worked for 10 of the 13 months. Very strange number, by the way. Why not 12 for a full year? 10 of the 13 months before birth or adoption, if that's what you're doing, at a minimum of 1 day a week, or the equivalent of 1 day a week.
How do you get an equivalent of 1 day? Oh, okay. So you're
So
saying
maybe
you work part-time 2 hours a day, for whatever it is, 2 hours a day.
Or
for
you had a
4 days
break.
week,
You had a
5 days
break
week.
for a couple of months,
Okay.
so you didn't work that 1 day a week, and then you went back, but you picked up more hours, and it was more than 1 day a week.
Mm-hmm.
So that worked out.
So
So
10
only
of the
one
13.
parent has to meet that.
one parent has to have, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Which for many people, that's going to be kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah.
If you've gone from what we're really saying is it's likely that you've gone from some form of formalised working arrangement to not working during the leave period. Yeah.
But again, there's complexity in that because
So what about self-employed and whatnot?
Yeah.
I guess that's easy to show as well.
yeah. And what if 10 of those 13 months you didn't work 10? What if you worked 9? And that's because you had another child before that. And you was
Beforehand, of course.
yeah. So it can get really, really complicated. So
Yeah.
I think it's just about being aware of.
This is the planning aspect.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's just knowing that these are the things you've got to think about, but underneath all of that, based on each individual circumstances, you've got to look at it a little bit more under the magnifying glass because it's not quite straightforward.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do think that's a good system that catches a lot of the public
yeah.
to be able to get some level of
Support. Yeah.
during maternity leave.
Yeah, and again, it's not a be all and end all. It's not going to put you, for the most part, for many people, it won't put them in the exact same position they were in beforehand, but it can go a long way. Yeah.
So even if you're entitled to the payments, that might not be enough to
No.
keep you afloat.
No.
It's this minimum wage.
Yeah.
And depending on what your situation already looks like, is that going to cover the bills and the mortgage and the food and the additional costs that you have now that you've got an extra child? So, of course, the next thing that you've got to pay particular attention to is saving. So you've looked at your employer entitlements, you've looked at your Centrelink entitlements. You've got to have a big focus then on
Money in
understanding
the bank or
how
liquid
much you need to
assets.
save
Yeah.
to be able to afford this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the hardest questions that I feel like I get in this space, and you probably find the same, Kels, is so I'm planning for a maternity or a paternity leave period, and I don't know how much it costs for a family of 2 to become a family of 3. Maybe it's easier when you go from family of 3 to 4 or whatnot, but that first baby in particular.
Could I just say, it depends on if you have the same gender or not, because if you don't have the same gender, you've got to buy new clothes.
And there's a lot of pretty girls' clothes too, whereas for Leo with boys, it was a bit like, here you go, here's a singlet, you're good, buddy.
Yeah, 5 of the same pack.
Exactly right. So it is probably a very typical question that we get, and it's not something that there's a one size fits all,
That's right.
As a very, very rough guide, if you have got no idea, sometimes I would work off of 20% increase to your existing budget.
Yep.
To add one more mouth in, because in the early days maybe there's less items that they're going to need, which might be more catered to when they're going into schooling and hobbies and uniforms, like all those different bits and pieces. But at least adding something additional to your budget so that when I've got nappies and formula and all the doctor's visits and all those different bits and pieces, it's going to cost me more tomorrow than what it does today.
Yeah.
But to at least have something put aside for that until you get a feel for it, and then you can redo your budget once bub comes along.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this is, the budget and understanding is not just how much can I save beforehand, how much do I need to have during that time where I don't have income, but it goes beyond that. Well, when I go back to work, what are my new costs going to be? Because the new costs might be daycare, childcare. What does that look like?
100%.
How does that fit into the budget?
Yeah.
Does my income of me going back to work cover this?
Yes. Yeah.
So I think that's that next level again of planning and understanding.
Definitely, and they're not easy decisions, and they definitely need a lot of time together to really kind of prepare for that and get it. But there's also the possibility that you approach this period and realize that there's going to be a shortfall for you. Like we say, money in the bank is good. support from Centrelink or your employer is very, very good. But it's possible that you still do all of that analysis and go, wow, I'm still short XYZ dollars per week or per month.
Yeah.
And I think it's in those kind of situations, it's then important to go back to the drawing board with our budgeting and go, right, how do I break this down? What are the must-haves that I can't live without? I can't live without nappies. I can't live without formula. I can't live without food for myself, roof over our head. But the nice-to-haves, maybe they're the things that get parked. I know personally I was not taking a 6-month-old overseas for a holiday or even down south for a holiday at that point in time. So maybe holidays are off the table for a bit. And, eating out might be, was not even in a state that I was ready to go and eat out because I didn't want to put my face on and all of that. But just going through and saying what are the things that I do need to have, insurances, groceries, electricity, blah, blah, blah.
And there'll probably be stuff there, right? Because I think if you're a couple or even just, if you're doing this by yourself, because people, do that, if you don't have children, you probably are doing a lot of stuff that's costing you money that you won't do when you have a child.
Yeah.
Because it just changes, your lifestyle changes.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So it's a good time to just pull that budget out, revisit it, break it down and say, right, for the period of time whilst I might have a lower income or no income, what needs to be culled out of here? And let's add those things back later when we get some further income coming back in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you kind of sort of hit the nail on the head that a big part of this can be the preparing for it. So preparing as a couple or preparing as a single person to enter into this kind of arrangement. So maybe there's some ideas of what you could do maybe as a couple. Do you want to talk through that, Kels?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing is actually to talk about your finances.
Don't make it taboo.
Because people sometimes they don't. So you've got to really think about how do you actually come together to save, because I think there's always going to be an element of needing to save. Most people aren't going to be going, well, my employer's going to pay my full wage.
And it's the just in case, right? So my day-to-day living sorted maybe from the income that's coming in, but what happens if the fridge blows up? But
how do you come together as a couple to understand that? So you really got to open up your doors to each other and go, because sometimes people don't have open communication about their finances. Do you know how much surplus income your partner has that they can put aside each pay cycle and vice versa? So how does that work out as a couple? What is everybody comfortable with in that space? Because it's better to have these conversations now than when it happens.
That's right.
And you're thrust into it, and you could be on 2 different pages.
And it might even be 2 different pages about how long one or both people are going to take off work, who plays what role later on, because that will affect your level of income that's coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think just be really clear with that off the bat. If you've already got combined finances, it's still an important conversation to have, even if you've got that transparency, because things do change. So just, really, really understand that fully and have those conversations as a couple.
Absolutely. And I mean, children, that it's not an overnight thing. They're going to be there for a long time. You got children for life, right?
You do. The gift that keeps on giving. My dad will tell you that. I'm still getting his help to come and do bits and pieces, and not just from a financial aspect. I think you always they fall back on your parents. So yes,
more and more in the current environment, I hear.
Yes, that's very, very true.
And so there's some really good points there as couples. If you are going to be a single parent, there's obviously maybe more strategies that you need to be thinking about, because there may be different challenges that arise. So what contingencies do you have in place if your parental leave needs to be extended for whatever period as well too? So maybe I'm planning to have 6 months, 12 months, whatever that number is, but then something changes. Maybe I'm unwell. Maybe my child has a different set of needs that I wasn't aware of beforehand. Maybe the working environment's changed. Exactly. You knew where I was heading. Make sure you've got stockpiled cash funds, liquid available funds, or insurances in place for covering you. Loss of wages is a huge one, because if I've got income protection and something does change for me, particularly maybe if I'm a mum and I'm having bub, there might be medical needs that arise as a result of that, you know.
Yeah.
So having that insurance in place before you're pregnant and before you have a baby on the way or have had the baby can be really critical as well too, because you might even be able to get those insurances at a better position than what you would after the point. It's kind of too late after the point, but it might be cheaper. It might be better medical conditions that you get it under.
Yeah.
And then other little bits and pieces, you know, can you extend your parental leave with your employer without issue? Do I have a plan for return to work? What additional support might I need in that transition back to work? So you sort of mentioned daycare. What about things like pick-up, drop-off situations, nannies, au pairs, if I have requirements with work that mean that I need sort of outside of hours support, all those cost money and due consideration. So I think the biggest thing that we're coming back to in all of this is it's a mini financial plan.
It is, yeah.
For family planning.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that means that you're probably going to need to give it some time as well.
Definitely.
That's to be prepared, to be financially prepared for it. But do you know, I've got a question for you, because your son is a bit older than mine.
He's going to be 11 soon.
Yeah. Do they get more expensive as they get older?
It's weird. It just changes over time, right? So I know we've sort of spoken about this before, because when you go from, for example, when we went from daycare to school, that was a cost reduction for us.
Yeah.
Everyone's situation is unique, depends on rebates and all those different bits and pieces that are going to happen. But and the school that you choose but that was a cost reduction. But then other things come on unexpectedly. So Leo needed to get within the space of sort of 18 months glasses and braces.
I'm hearing $10,000 is what you should be prepared for if you're...
It's really tough. We were lucky that he needed a partial set of braces, so it was just the top 6 teeth. But yes, that was quite a few $1,000s of that alone. And we obviously got your private health insurance, but you got to be careful of that too, because sometimes with the private health insurance, they'll cover a set of orthodontics work. And is that orthodontics? I think that's what that's called. Anyway, but they told us that maybe Leo might need braces again later, like a full set later. Doing this partial set was just to fix one issue, and you might need that again later. So really thinking about how you're utilising your benefits.
Yeah.
And then, you know, again, so he's about to transition from primary school to high school. And there can be a difference in cost. So it's probably going to be an increase in cost to us when he goes to high school, and then has all those other tertiary things that you're looking at if you've, you know, maybe
sports,
and
all
textbooks
those sorts
and all
of things.
that. Yeah. So I don't think that there's ever a
Just
time
chops
when
and
they're going to
changes,
be more expensive or less expensive. I think it's going to come down to the individual child and the parents and what they want for them and what they need for them, and then the other random things that life just throws up there for you. Yeah.
And this is the interesting thing, you know, the theme of this podcast was to talk about how do you financially prepare for a family. Now, people make having a family work in all sorts of conditions, and all kids really need is love, right? For in a happy home. So you can make it work, and I think that it all comes back to your values, right? You could almost take an approach of what are my values, what's most important to me.
Yes.
When you're making all of these decisions around these sorts of things.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Exactly right. And I think people will continue to make it work into the future. And they've done that. I always think it's comforting knowing they've done it before. We'll be able to do it again. So hopefully for our listeners, there's been something useful in there. If you're looking to plan for a family or have a family that's on the way, or expanding a family, or whatever the case may be, if you'd like to learn more about this topic area, please shoot us some comments. We'd love to hear your feedback, and we're looking forward to tuning in next time for another Wealth Experience podcast. The opinions of the presenters are objectively ascertainable and are not intended to be financial product or personal advice.